You are tuned into KNCE Taos 93.5 FM, True Taos Radio. I'm Julia Daye here with What Are These Things? Inquiry and World Music every Tuesday, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. It is 11 o'clock on the dot right now. We were just listening to Land of by Saint Germain. And on the phone right now, we have our friend Marshall James Kavanaugh, who is a poet, dream laborer, and a poetic creator of dream spaces for his readership to explore. His works contain both the surreal and the absurd in a culture-driven attempt at documenting the creative activism of his generation. Originally from Philadelphia, Marshall has lived part-time in Taos for a number of years and has been on the road traveling coast to coast performing spoken word. A lot of Taoseños know him as the typewriter poet that shows up at the Taos Farmers Market over the summers. He is coming out with a brand new haiku collection tomorrow titled Travel by Haiku, Volume 6 through 8, Far Out on the Road with Friends, which is a collaborative ode to the community found on the road, written by 6 navigators over the course of 3 separate road trips. Marshall, thank you so much for being with us on KNCE.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to hear your voice, Julia.
It's great to hear yours, too. I'm excited to talk to you and talk about this very exciting collection that is going to be released tomorrow, and excited to talk to you about also the release event that's happening. So maybe to start us off, could you talk to us a little bit about this haiku collection that is coming out tomorrow on Wednesday, Travel by Haiku Volumes 6 through 10?
Sure, yeah. So this is volume 6 through 10 of Travel by Haiku, which means it's, at some point there's 1 through 5. You might have, if you've seen me at the farmer's market, you might have seen me with a old copy of Travel by Haiku, which is all haikus I wrote while traveling around the country over 2 years. In this new book, I'm really excited because, the personal meditation of writing haiku has expanded to collective collaboration. And so all the haikus throughout the book are written by other authors or with other authors, where while we were traveling around the country, we basically passed a notebook around the car, and each one of us took a line and just captured what we were seeing. And for people who are unfamiliar with what haiku is, it's a Japanese short form of poetry where you have 3 lines. And traditionally in the American style, you do you play with the syllables. So you have 3 lines. Each line is 5, 7, 5 syllables. Mm-hmm. So yeah, these haikus were written where you have 3 people in the car and you pass a notebook around. One person writes 1 line, the next person writes the 2nd line. Last person writes the 3rd line, and all of a sudden you have this beautiful representation of this collective voice or collective experience. These road trips took place in 2015 and 2016. So kind of a long time ago, but at the same time, it's I feel they were for me in a personal journey. They were in a place where I feel like my personal story, my personal growth was kind of matched by this national growth that was happening, and this was before the 2016 election.
Marshall,
the last road trip. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, I there's something you said, in your description of what this collection is that really struck me, which is the way you were talking about collaborating with these other poets. That is such a unique choice. Usually when you open a book of poetry, especially a collection like this, it's by one author. Can you talk about this choice of collaboration? Because you're not talking about necessarily combined. Usually when you see a collection of poems that is written by multiple authors, it's like one poem is by one author, another poem is by another author, but having this kind of model where you are both, or all 3 or 4, how many of you are writing one poem together, I think that's so unique. Can you talk about why you valued that enough to put that in a book?
Well, I mean, at first it started as like a game. I mean, I feel like haiku is a very playful form.
Yeah.
But I've always been influenced by this style of poetry and art making, which is called exquisite corpse. It was like something that the surrealists and Dadaists would do, and like, you know, they would be all sitting in like a bar and just passing around a notebook and either like writing a poem line for line, or they would be doing a drawing where each artist would like add to the drawing from the last. So I don't know. It's I feel like these are playful ways of getting the mind to like kind of open up. But as far as putting a book out with these collected haikus, I don't know. I had this journal floating around in my car for several years, and I had, you know, many other people had journeyed with me in the notebook as well. But what I really, I don't know, what I really enjoyed about each like collection or each trip or each group of people writing these haikus together is that, you know, even though we're all separate people and we all have separate things to say, and sometimes each line doesn't really line up with the next line, it's like overall that each haiku has this like, I don't know, unique voice that like resounds outwards from the haiku. And in this new book, so there's separate sections that correspond to each road trip and each group of people, and you really get to see how like this, I don't know, it's like an exploration of what an author is. Even like it's like the author is kind of like taken away from the equation. It's more like I guess like the words of the earth kind of like come forward, and this collaborative experience like creates a voice where you're like really like, wow, this group, I mean, I guess like I can't wait to hear what people think of the book. If like people are like, oh, I really like these authors, you know, or like I really like this section, like comparing the different haiku styles, you know.
Absolutely. And I know you've described, to me at least, as you've described Taos as a silent anchor throughout the book. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I was saying how, like, you know, there's besides the haikus, there's also some travel fiction that's like interspersed throughout the book. So it kind of gives the reader a chance to see where the haikus are coming from, as well as like allow me to like just tell my story and, you know, tell my journeys. I really like how Basho does this in his like haiku collections, where it's like he often has his journals next to a section of haikus, so you get to read like, oh, Basho was like in this village talking to these villagers. Anyway, for me, I feel like the Taos is definitely a large part of my own personal growth. I discovered Taos on a road trip in 2016, or discover is the wrong word. I came upon Taos in 2016, and I feel like it really I don't know, it opened me up as a person, as far as like I grew up in the Philadelphia area, lived in Philly for a long time. I traveled across the country and lived in Oakland for a while. And then, you know, coming to Taos, it was like this experience of instead of the hustle and bustle of the city, it was like, oh, I'm going to like hustle and bustle up this hiking trail and like be still with the mountain. And so throughout the book, you're like taken across the landscape from coast to coast, but, you know, Taos pops up in the travel fiction. In one section, it's just like, it's kind of like a subtle anchor on the way out to the West Coast. And then in the second section, there's this, I don't know, the narrative kind of changes because it shifts from a writer being like, I'm experiencing the earth as an outsider, to I'm one with the earth and my language is wilderness. And that section starts with me living in Taos And I feel like I wouldn't have been able to find that language of being one with the wilderness without living so closely with the mountains and the community that's in Taos. I feel like the indigenous presence that's in Taos is very, connective to that type of experience. But also, I feel like a lot of people who have settled in Taos also, at this point, maybe even come to Taos for those reasons.
That's a really interesting. That's a really interesting transformation that you just described of your poetic language and how that's changed over time, especially with your relationship to Taos. In this collection, we know the protagonist is Marshall Deerfield. Can you talk about kind of the line between Marshall James Kavanaugh, who I'm talking to right now, and Marshall Deerfield?
Sure. So Marshall Deerfield, I feel like for me is, well, as far as in relation to the book, Marshall Deerfield is a road sign in Wisconsin that I drove by on my first road trip out west in 2014. It's somewhere outside of I don't know. It's between Milwaukee and Minnesota. Maybe it's past Minnesota. Maybe it's actually in Minneapolis. I think it's in Wisconsin though. On the way to Minneapolis, and it's, I don't know. I caught the sign. It's a giant highway sign. As the sun was setting, took a photo of it, and later reflected on, wait, this is like Marshall the poet, like the haikuist, the Zen lunatic who's driving across the country, whereas Marshall James Kavanaugh is more of like this like great like Celtic Irish long lineage of poets, like the evolution of that. So I don't know. Deerfield to me is more of a playful character that I like to play with.
Gotcha.
He's also the main character of a novel that I've been working on for a while that also corresponds to a lot of these like kind of autobiographical travels. So in the novel, I like to work with, instead of doing like memoir, I like to work on like borderline fiction. So it's like taking what really happened and expanding the context a little bit to be more dreamy or more surreal. And hopefully I'll have the reader being in this place where they're questioning, like, what happened? What's even happening? Like, so I feel like Deerfield, like, kind of exists in that realm. It's like a borderline fiction of myself. So some of the stuff is very, very true and very connected, but a lot of it is expanding on certain emotions or certain experiences or certain ways of, I don't know, this like context of like the wilderness of language. Like,
okay,
yeah. I don't know. Marshall herself is still connected to this like crazy world that we live in, and the hustle and bustle of cities, but Marshall Deerfield is allowed to be a little bit more wild.
Okay, that makes sense to me. If you just tuned in, we're talking to Marshall James Kavanaugh, a poet, dream laborer, and the author of a brand new haiku collection coming out tomorrow titled Travel by Haiku, Volume 6 through 10, Far Out on the Road with Friends. Marshall, so I know that tomorrow there's going to be a release event for Travel by Haiku, Volume 6 through 10. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So what's cool about now, even though it's kind of uncool, I mean, normally a release party is like a live event where I would be like, all right, let's all go to this tea room and let's sit and drink tea and let's like listen to each other's poetry, and I'm going to have this book available, and it's like this exciting event. But what's cool about now with the pandemic and social distancing is, everything's online. So, which also means that anyone, anywhere can connect to what's going on. So tomorrow at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, I will be having an online Zoom release party for this book that's coming out. And what's cool about that is like, not only can the audience be anywhere in the world watching this, the performers that are performing are from all over the country. And for me, I feel like what I was with creating this lineup, what I was trying to create is like that sense of the road, like the community that's found on the road. Not just like my own personal story necessarily, but like this story that's like a collective story of people in different places creating amazing things, people and their own personal journeys with whether it's wilderness or just being on the highway and going somewhere new. And I mean, I feel like in my own personal travels, what I've experienced is just like connecting these different places and these different people across all over the country. And I don't know. It's like I feel like I don't have one community. I feel like I have this collective community that's like dispersed across this time and space. So yeah, tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, you'll get to see a little bit of an experience of that with live performances of poetry. There will also be music, and there will be some video art as well, which will be collaborations based on these haikus and also like personal work by some of the performers.
Great. And how can people attend the event who are interested, who are listening to this broadcast right now?
Yeah, sure. So everything's on the internet. You can go to my website, MarshallJamesKavanaugh.com, MarshallJamesKavanaugh.com. And there's a link on my website where you can RSVP. Basically, you'll need to RSVP on Eventbrite. And then from there, you'll be able to get the Zoom link. And so if you're unfamiliar with Zoom, Zoom is kind of a online conferencing software. It's really easy to download. It's you can install it on your phone if you have a smartphone, or you can use it on your computer. And one really nice thing about it is that we'll all be in the room together. So we'll all be I mean, you can turn off your video if you don't feel like if you want privacy and you want to just like tune in and listen. But also, we'll be able to see each other. If you want to turn your video on, you'll be able to see the other people that are watching in the audience.
Great. And I think, I would guess that most people are pretty familiar with Zoom at this point. For folks who are curious about the book, specifically, where can people buy the book?
So right now the book is going to be mostly available from my website as well. So Marshall James Kavanaugh, MarshallJamesKavanaugh.com. And so, yeah, I have my web store on there. You can order directly from there. Also, if you RSVP to the event, you can also buy a book when you RSVP. So the event is free to attend, but when you click RSVP, you have the option of buying a book as well.
Fantastic. And this event, of course, for folks who maybe tuned in late, is tomorrow, Wednesday the 31st, from 6 to 9 p.m. Taos time. So, if you feel interested, I definitely encourage folks to get involved and RSVP for that. So, Marshall, we have your website. Are there other ways people can get involved or follow your work, find out more about you?
Yeah, sure. So you can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook as Marshall James Kavanaugh. Or on Instagram, you can look me up and follow my typewritten poetry that you've seen at the farmers market, and also I travel around the country with. My handle on Instagram is @DreamPoetForHire, and you'll be able to connect to the event from all those places as well.
Fantastic. And before we close, I would love for our listeners to get a taste of this book, if you'd be willing to read us a couple of haikus.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'd love to. But yeah, one thing about the book that's really, really fun to play with is, I guess it's hard to talk about it without showing you the book. So it'll be fun to be able to show you guys the book tomorrow. But some of the haikus like take up the whole page. And the reason for that is I really like how haikus, well, as I've learned, as I've like performed haiku over time, I've learned that some haikus like sing more than others. They like fill space. in this way. Like some haikus are just like, yeah, 3 lines, whatever. The other ones are like, ooh, the moon, you know, like
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, you gotta like let that word sing. So I'll try to create that like full page feel in these next few haikus. And these are from this new book, Travel by Haiku, volume 6 through 10, Far Out on the Road with Friends. Spiraling out is the mind of a dream poet standing in sunshine. Some say life's a beach. Deerfield says get lost in it and enjoy the view. A good friend once said, the moon speaks for the glaciers. Earth hardly listens. Wholly unreal. Sometimes landscapes are like paintings, time with calm brushstrokes. I could sit here and write haiku for the rest of my life, but then what? And that's it.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Marshall.
Julia.
And I love how you deliver those. That's Marshall James Kavanaugh reading from his brand new collection coming out tomorrow, Travel by Haiku, volumes 6 through 10. Marshall is a dream poet and dream laborer who we often have seen at his typewriter at the Taos Farmers Market. Marshall, congratulations on this new book, and thank you so much for being on KNCE.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. And also for people tuning in, Julia will be performing tomorrow night as well. So
Yes, I will.
just a heads up on that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you
for
so
having me,
much.
and, see you later, Taos.
All right. Thank you, Marshall. And you're tuned to KNCE Taos 93.5 FM, True Taos Radio. I'm Julia Daye. Once again, that was the voice of Marshall James Kavanaugh. That was some of his poetry he just read from his collection, Travel by Haiku, volume 6 through 10, coming out tomorrow. There will be the release event tomorrow evening, 6 to 9 p.m. Mountain Time. You can get tickets through MarshallJamesKavanaugh.com. Thank you once again to our friend Marshall. We'll be right back after these messages. Thank you for being with us on KNCE Taos 93.5 FM, True Taos Radio.